Hello everyone and welcome to the official All Things Watch podcast, where we talk all things movies, television streaming, and everything in between. And in this video, this is going to be our open spoiler discussion of the brand new movie, which is actually in cinemas right now, which is simply titled Trapped. Okay folks, if you have not seen the brand new movie Trapped, you have been warned. This is an open spoiler discussion where not only will we be talking about this movie, but we will actually be showing screenshots, which unfortunately are not high definition. The movie is still in theater, so I can only get like cam pics, so to speak, which I found online, which is how I do all these reviews. I accumulate pictures that I find online from leaks and whatnot and all that good stuff. So if you haven't seen the movie Trapped, then click away from this podcast and go and watch the movie and then come back and we will have this discussion. So anyways, with that being with that being said is what I'm trying to say. Sorry folks, it's really late. I had a long day, worked a 10-hour shift, and now it's like almost 1 o'clock in the morning. Anyways, this movie mainly follows two characters, essentially three if you want to include Selika Shyamalan's character, and Selika portrays a character known as Lady Raven, and she basically is a performer who is the host of this grandiose theater or concert, so to speak, and she is putting this concert together because she is trying to set a trap for this so-called serial killer or even murderer, so to speak, by the name of Cooper. Now at this point in time, the authorities, the police, don't really know who Cooper is. They just know that he is a threat, and somehow they were able to gather enough evidence to know that Cooper would be at Lady Raven's concert, and of course Lady Raven is portrayed by Selika Shyamalan. Now of course the main villain, quote unquote, never mind. The main villain, which is really which the story revolves around, is the character of course Cooper, and Cooper is portrayed by Josh Hartnett, which is the whole reason why I wanted to see this movie. Anyways, I'm a huge fan of Josh Hartnett, and I could not wait to see him return, to see what he would bring to this role. I really felt like he could really have that villainous type charisma if he really wanted to. I love Josh Hartnett. I've been watching him. One of the first times I've ever been exposed to him was a movie, I believe, back in like maybe the late 90s or even early 2000s, known as The Faculty. That was my first exposure to Josh Hartnett. I've been a pretty big fan ever since. But in this film, he portrays a character known as Cooper, and he is a murderer who is, so to speak, on the run. Not really on the run, but he, you know, the authorities don't know who he is, so I guess technically he's on the run in the sense that he hasn't been caught yet. Now, he has a daughter he is extremely close to, known as Riley, and Riley is of course portrayed by Ariel Donoghue, who in my opinion was the standout performance of the film. I believe Ariel did the best job of all the performances. I think even more so, even better than Alison Pill, and I'm a huge fan of Alison Pill, huge fan of her as well, but I do think that Ariel Donoghue was the standout performance of this movie. So let's go ahead and jump into the actual scene-by-scene breakdown. And so the movie actually opens, pretty well opens, with Cooper and his daughter Riley already at the concert. Now, like I said, she is a huge fan of Lady Raven, which is why she's here, and of course, you know, Cooper agrees to let her come. Now, somehow, and from my recollection, they actually don't even really explain how the authorities figured out that he was going to be here. They do say that they uncovered, somehow, I think they said that they uncovered it like digitally or something, like they'd seen that he purchased tickets, or he purchased tickets and they found, like somehow they figured out that the killer acquired tickets but somehow didn't know who the killer was. All they knew was that it was a white male and that he was going to be at this concert. And they do tell you in the movie that there was roughly, I think they say like almost 30,000 people at this concert, in which only 3,000 of the people in the concert were actually male. So only probably, if my math is correct, roughly about 10% of the people at the concert were male, which really made it easy for you know, the authorities to try their best to narrow it down. And so he takes his daughter, you know, Riley, to this concert because that's what she really wants. Now, very early on, as you can see here with the screenshot, very early on, we learn right away pretty well that Cooper is of course a villain, because right away he goes onto his phone, he hauls out his phone, and we have this video footage, or actually it's a live feed footage of this person that he already has kidnapped. And you do learn in the movie that he for some reason has access to a bunch of vacant properties, I think. So I don't really know why he has access. I don't recall them saying that he was like a real estate agent or anything like that. Maybe he's a firefighter or something. No, actually he's not a firefighter, I don't think. I can't even remember what they say his profession is, other than the fact that we know he's a killer. And he has access to these vacant lots, and of course he's holding this person and this character in the video. We eventually, as the movie progresses, we learn that this character's name is Spencer. And so once again, very early on, pretty well in the whole first act of the movie, we see the FBI come in, and they got the SWAT, and they got all sorts of you know, just this whole array of people coming, and SWAT and different levels of authorities coming, and they completely lock down the building, secure the building, surround the building. There's like checkpoints at every single exit, trying to figure out who this butcher and who this killer is. Of course they don't really know who it is, so they're locking it down. All they know is that he's here, they know he's male, they know he's a white male. As the movie progresses, we learn that they do actually have some details about him, like what color his shirt is. I apologize, I had to wet my throat. I've been talking all night pretty well and all day, so I got to keep my vocal cords nice and wet. And so the FBI surrounds the location, and so this sort of basically forces Cooper into a corner. And let's not forget that his daughter Riley is with him as well, so he really is trapped, so to speak, and he really needs to find his way out of this. Now, as the movie progresses, he ends up running into a bunch of characters. This one in particular, who he runs into, who's actually someone working at the venue, and he basically innocently tells Cooper a whole whackload of information. He tells him, hey, all these authorities are here because they're trying to catch this murderer or serial killer, you know, tomato, tomato. And he basically spills the beans and tells him a lot about the security checks. Says, you know that there's security on every exit, there's security in the parkade, there's security on the roof, and they just tell him, you know, completely that all this security's here. And like I said, because they're looking for this killer, or this butcher, I believe they nickname him. And so this forces Cooper now, of course, to have to sort of, you know, work around this. How is he going to be able to leave the concert in the long run at the end of the concert if they have to go through these checkpoints? He knows for a fact that he will likely be caught if he goes through these checkpoints, because we also learn in this movie as well that there is a profiler on site, and I believe they say her name is Dr. Josephine Grant, and she's basically a professional profiler. She really knows her stuff. Or actually, is it? Yeah, I think that's her name, Dr. Grant. I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's who they say it was. And you know, she's a profiler, and so this makes Cooper very nervous, because he knows that if he hangs around too long, this profiler is going to figure out that he is the butcher. And so he basically just goes into escape mode. He just wants out. He doesn't want anything to do with these. You know, he doesn't want anything to do with the checkpoints, because he's just too afraid. And so he ends up trying to create all these different distractions. As you can see here on screen, he ends up pushing this innocent lady down over the stairs, which ends up getting her, you know, really beat up. You know, he ends up gaining trust with a whole bunch of people, you know, gaining access codes and whatnot, as you can see. And really he you know, he goes looking around the facility, and he really just goes on his own sort of surveillance, almost Renaissance type mission and whatnot, and he really starts to scope out the area and really sort of manipulates his way around basically a lot of the employees of the venue, because he doesn't really know how to escape. How's he going to get out, you know, with all these? He's very much afraid that he's going to get caught. And so eventually he ends up accumulating one of the actual earpieces from security, and he's now able to actually listen in to all of the action. He's able to listen to the profiler, the person who's trying to catch him, the authority, the FBI, the police, and all the different levels of security, even just the regular venue security itself. And once he acquires this and accumulates this, he starts to learn a little bit about how much information they actually really have on him. And so you know, and so this makes him very worried. And so as the story continues, you can see that he wants to basically make a distraction to try to escape, maybe in the chaos or in the crowd, and he's actually about to pull the fire alarm when he actually hears on the earpiece that this professional profiler, who I think was Dr. Grant, actually says on the earpiece to keep an eye on things like distractions. And they say things like he's probably going to try to escape with the crowd, he's going to try to create some form of distraction, some form of delusion, whether that be via, you know, fire alarm or maybe like a bomb or something big that will cause a distraction. But this profiler is very skilled and very accurate for the most part as well, and tells the crowd that, you know, this person you know, is going to be, you know, keep an eye on that. You know, if a big distraction happens, keep an eye on it. Chances are it's the killer just trying to escape. So the moment that Cooper hears this, he basically you know, he basically tries to find a way around this, and so he ends up going back to his daughter. Now there does be a little bit of conflict, so to speak, back and forth between Cooper and his daughter Riley, because of the fact that he is constantly sort of coming and going with the crowds. You know, he goes and he always got these really weird excuses. Like one excuse was legitimate, you know, like he had to go use the washroom or something like that. So that's legitimate. You know, if you're at a concert, especially sometimes a concert that could be 2 hours, 3 hours long, you do oftentimes sort of maybe need to go to the restroom or whatnot. But then, like, the moment he gets back to his daughter Riley, then he's all of a sudden he's like, oh, I think I left my Visa card or debit card or my bank card, you know, back at this cafeteria, so to speak. And this really raises a lot of questions for Riley, because she's like almost right away knows, like, hey, you know, you're acting pretty weird here. Like, what's going on? You're not normally like this. You don't normally act this weird. You're not normally this forgetful. Like, what's really going on with all, you know, with all this craziness? And so, but amongst all this, you know, while he's still wearing this earpiece, he actually learns that there is, so to speak, a way of him being able to sort of escape and get out, because he learns from the earpiece that really the only little bit of, not just the earpiece, but even just from chatter around the crowd and from the people working at the venue, he learns that the only way that he could really maybe or possibly escape, you know, being a little undetected, is by going through backstage, because that's where the least amount of security really is, where the actual performers are, because they don't suspect that someone like the killer, someone like Cooper, would actually be backstage, because they just wouldn't have that authority to be backstage. And so the minute Cooper gets this idea, he approaches someone who actually works at the venue and comes up with this just crazy story, and is able to actually convince them to choose his daughter Riley to become this, I think they call her like, I can't remember what they call her now, like a dream, some weird like dream performer, or like a VIP, like somehow he's able to manipulate them to choose her to go up on stage and actually dance with the singer. So of course, once he persuades them and manipulates them into choosing his daughter. Then they call her up on stage, and of course she's ecstatic. She's here, she's all for it. You know, Riley's here to see Lady Raven, and you know, she just wants to have a time. She has no idea that Cooper is, you know, is this crazy serial killer. She has no idea that he's this murderer or this butcher. Excuse me, folks. And so she's just ecstatic. She's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they chose me. I can't even quite remember the excuse that he used. I think he, like, it was something, I can't remember if he told them like he had like his daughter was like terminally ill or something. Like, it was something crazy. Either way, he's able to convince them to call her name and whatnot. And so him and his daughter ends up getting backstage through that. Now, up to this point of the movie, even though I did feel like there were a few things that were a little bit far-fetched, I was kind of like, I don't know if it would really have went that easy. I think there would have been a little bit more of a battle, a little bit more of a struggle for, you know, him to be able to get Riley backstage. I know that with film, we have to suspend our imagination, but even in this movie, I did sort of feel like, you know, even in this scenario, I did think it was a little far-fetched, but not to the point where it was completely 100% unbelievable. I still bought into the idea that maybe this could happen, but it wasn't too far-fetched, and, you know, I mean, it was really far-fetched, but I was able to believe it because I was able to believe the fact that maybe this type of serial killer would be intelligent enough to be able to manipulate people to get his daughter in this situation, if that makes sense. One of my favorite TV shows of all time was, of course, Dexter, and we know Dexter, of course, was like a master manipulator. Nobody could manipulate like Dexter, so, you know, I sort of forgave it a little bit, even though, yes, it was very unrealistic, very unbelievable. I sort of forgave it just because of the fact that, you know, it's a movie and whatnot. So anyways, he gets her backstage, and she ends up going out and actually dancing with Lady Raven, which was really cool. You know, like I said, she's a huge fan. Not only does she get picked to go backstage, but she's allowed to go out and perform. And just all this really cool stuff. But of course, we know that Cooper is only trying to do this because he's trying, you know, he's only allowing this or whatever because he's simply just trying to escape. He literally, that's it. He just wants to escape, and he just, you know, that's it. That's his only objective is to escape, basically. And so after his daughter and Lady Raven perform, once again they sort of go backstage, but this is more or less like a sort of like a farewell, I would say is more of like a meet and greet, so to speak, sort of situation. It's not so much that they're backstage now because she's going to go out on stage. This is more of like a congratulations, it was nice to meet you, now let's go home, so to speak. Like, this is at the very end of the venue, and this is sort of where the movie, for me, really starts to go downhill, because Cooper did something that I believe was really stupid, and I know it really has nothing to do with Cooper himself. Obviously it's the writing. You know, Josh Hartnett is only doing his part in portraying Cooper. He's only you know, he's only playing the part, but this is when the movie really went down and took a dive for me, because this is what happens. As you can see here, Cooper and Lady Raven here are backstage in a private situation, in a private room, talking, and I just thought that this was so strange, because like, Lady Raven is probably one of the most famous people in this world, in this movie world. You know, she's almost like a Taylor Swift in this movie world, where all these, you know, thousands, maybe even millions of fans are just like drooling over her, and over her concert, and over her performances, and over her music. And here you have this serial killer, this actual killer, who's on the run, undercover, trying to disguise himself in this venue because the authorities know that he's here, and he just goes into a private room with Lady Raven, one of the most famous people in the world, in this universe, in this movie world, and just openly tells her right away, as soon as he meets her, instantly tells her that he's the killer. And I was just like, what? Really? Up to this point of the movie, I absolutely loved the movie. I loved the premise. I love everything building up to this point. But then I was just like, what? This is the direction that the writers wanted to take this character? He calls her in and tells her, hey, you better help me and my daughter Riley escape, or this man that he shows her on his cell phone is going to die. And I was just like, really? You have someone who's this like master manipulator, this serial killer, who's obviously killed more than this person that he has held here, and he decides, because of a few police and a few guarded checkpoints, he just decides that he's going to call this like extremely famous person into this private room and just reveal to her that he is this murderer, the butcher, this person that everybody's looking for, and that there will be no consequences. Like, really? Like, I was kind of like scratching my head, like, really? This is the direction that the movie wants to go? This is where the writers wanted to take this, for the most part, very compelling story? Like, they could have done anything, literally anything would have been better than this. For example, why didn't Cooper just tell his daughter to meet him at the car? She wasn't a threat. She could have easily gotten through security. And if he really is this, you know, very smart, intelligent killer who's really good at manipulating victims and whatnot, like, why didn't he just figure out his own way out and just tell his daughter Riley to just meet him in the car? Hey sweetie, just meet me outside. I gotta run to the washroom. I'll meet you at the car. You just go outside and I'll meet you there. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Like, really? Do you really think that someone like this, who's like used to killing people, used to getting away with killing people, like, do you really think that he couldn't just manipulate or figure out a way to escape? The only concern that he really had was his daughter, and she's not even a threat. She can easily get through the checkpoints. The police are not after the daughter, they're after him. So to me, it was just sloppy and lazy and stupid. It was like, I was mind blown. It's like, you take this killer who's now going to confess to one of the most popular, most famous people in this movie world, knowing the amount of resources and money and power that she has, and you're just going to willingly tell her, oh, by the way, I'm a serial killer. Like, what? So to me, that was, you know, this part of the movie really started to go downhill for me at this point. But anyways, it is what it is. He tells her that he's this butcher fella, tells her straight up, hey, these are, you know, all you folks here at the venue, all the police, all the security, they're here looking for me. And he basically manipulates her and talks to her and actually convinces her, which is something else that I found very unbelievable, to help him escape. He's like, hey, if you don't help me and my daughter escape, I'm going to kill this person by poisoning Spencer with carbon monoxide poisoning. Once again, something that I thought was super unbelievable, because I think that in the real world, Lady Raven would have been like, okay, you can go ahead and kill this person. It's not my fault. This is on you, not on me. And she would have just ran to the closest police officer and be like, yo, this is the butcher. Take him in. Save his daughter, Riley. Get Riley as far away from this killer as you can. And that's the end of it. So, but anyways, the writing didn't go that way. That makes too much sense, at least to me. And so, you know, he convinces her and she falls for it, and she gets in to the limousine and takes Riley and Cooper back to their home, wherever that is. I think they say it's in New Jersey or something like that. Now, one little bit of credit that I will give to the writing, even though I thought that part was just completely ridiculous, I will give credit to the writing to some degree, because I do think that Lady Raven was very intelligent. I think that she played her part very good, because you know, I just thought that she was very smart in trying to sort of get Cooper caught and sort of trying to get him to either A, turn himself into the police, or B, just simply get him caught in general. Because when they actually get into the limousine, she actually, you know, sort of manipulates his daughter, Riley, who's a huge fan, and basically actually says, "Hey Riley, how would you like it if I actually came to your house?" And of course, that would initially force Lady Raven to then figure out, you know, where Cooper and where Riley live and whatnot. So you know, I could give credit there. I do think that how they wrote Lady Raven's character, I did think that that was pretty believable. I think that she acted the way that most people would have acted. She tried her best to really save Spencer and get this murderer caught. But just the way that the murderer himself, Cooper, the way that he acted, I just thought was so weird and quite frankly pretty dumb for the writing. But anyways, it is what it is. And so they all get into the limousine, and of course they end up going back home, and they end up meeting, of course, Riley's mother, and of course Riley's sister. I believe her mom's name was Rachel, and I'm not even sure what Riley, was it Riley's sister? No, Riley's brother, sorry, not her sister. I don't even see a credit there for who he was. But anyways, yeah, so anyways, I'm on IMDb here trying to look at the cast. But either way, anyways, Cooper ends up bringing Lady Raven back to their home, and of course Riley does as well, and she ends up meeting the mom and the brother, and now this ends up giving her access to the home. And so Lady Raven ends up coming into the home, and once again I thought that it was very clever. She actually confronts Cooper in a way that I was not expecting to. I thought that was pretty cool. She basically sort of starts to talk about all the information about the killer, telling the whole family, and of course also Cooper himself, sort of revealing just how much they really know about him. She claims that, you know, they know that the killer drives a dark vehicle because it's sort of because they figured the killer has some form of like OCD or something, and so they figured like a dark colored vehicle would basically be like a cleaner type vehicle. So, you know, they reveal that. She reveals that the killer is a white Caucasian man, and they know that much. She also even goes as far as saying that they told her that the killer also potentially has some childhood trauma, maybe even some you know, history with you know, having an aggressive household, or being having a dispute with the mother. I'm pretty sure she specified. Pretty sure she said that the mother, something about the mother, there was like an aspect of the relationship that had to do with the mother, some form of childhood trauma and whatnot. And this of course obviously ends up making Cooper very angry, but once again Lady Raven is very intelligent and actually asks if they would like her to play a song live here in their living room on the piano that they actually owns, which once again is pretty convenient. I mean, how many people actually has a piano in their home? But I could forgive it. For the sake of this movie, I was able to sort of look past that and forgive this. But you know, like I said, there was a few things in this movie that were either a little convenient or just a little even too far-fetched for what the movie itself set up. But anyways, we can forget that. So Lady Raven is like, "Hey Riley, would you like me to play you one last time before I go?" Because Cooper now is getting very impatient, and he just is really trying to get Lady Raven out of the house, because he knows that if she stays there that he is potentially going to end up getting caught and whatnot. But you know, he's just trying to get her out. And so everybody's like, yeah, play a song. Like I said, Cooper's the only person that really knows that he's the killer, so everybody else is like, yeah, you know, let's go, you know, please play us a song, let us hear your, oh, excuse me, oh, sorry folks, long day. And he's like, let us hear you play here live. And once again, like I said, the writing for Lady Raven's character was phenomenal, and I think Lady Raven actually was probably written the best. But I do think that Riley, Ariel Donague's character, I think she did the best. I think Ariel Donague's character I think she gave the best performance, but I think that Lady Raven's character was written the best. And so Lady Raven comes up with this idea like, hey, let's take a selfie. And of course, she hides away the cell phone, so coincidentally or conveniently, Raleigh is not able to find her cell phone. So Lady Raven's like, well, let's use your dad's, and she quickly swipes it and grabs the cell phone to take a selfie, sorry, and then runs and locks herself into the washroom. And now that's one thing that I thought was very well done with the writing. Very clever. I really liked how Lady Raven is sort of trying to do the right thing. Yes, she is a celebrity. Yes, she does have all this fame and all this power, but she's trying to use that now in a way to try and save Spencer. She has all these followers, so the first thing that comes to her mind is get the dad's phone, in which she can actually communicate with Spencer, and then use her own phone to try to reach out to her fans and her followers and all these thousands and perhaps millions of people to see if they are able to figure out his location and actually pinpoint the roughly the location in the area that Spencer might be being held at, and so that they could call the police and whatnot. And now this is one part of the movie that I actually thought was done very well. I did think that this part of the writing, like I said, I think that Ariel Donoghue had the best performance, but I did think that Lady Raven was probably one of the better written characters, because everything that she did really seemed to make sense. It wasn't so, you know, cookie cut, so scripted. It actually, she actually acted in a way that I think most of us would at the very least try to act if this were a real life situation. Like I said, using her fame, as you can see on the screen, you know, she's literally going live on her social media. Excuse me. I believe at one point she actually texts or sends a text message to her security guard that was outside still in the limo. She's like, hey, you know, call the police, we're gonna need some backup, we're gonna need some help. You know, she basically identifies Cooper as being this butcher, this killer, and she's actually able to save Spencer, and Cooper is actually very surprised. And so this is one part of the writing that I actually really enjoyed, because I really thought it made sense. She acted in a very realistic way, because I do think that anyone that had the opportunity to take Cooper's phone, they would, for many reasons. One, it takes away the weapon. You know, we know that Cooper had the ability to kill Spencer, you know, through this app or through this live feed by pushing a button which would release all this carbon monoxide, I think they say it was. So by her stealing his phone, for one, this disarms him and takes away that ability for him to be able to actually kill Spencer. But then on top of that as well, with her having this with his cell phone, this also allows her to have the ability to actually talk to Spencer, which is how she sort of figures out where he is, by giving all this information to her own platform and her own followers. You know, she gets Spencer to sort of describe a bunch of things, like, you know, where was he, you know, describe some things that he, you know, whatever he can remember, you know, getting to that place, you know, some landmarks and whatnot. And of course, you know, this is sort of what she ends up doing to, you know, essentially end up saving his life, is she eventually do end up being able, they do end up being able to find him, because of the fact that she was smart enough to steal Cooper's phone and then, like I said, communicate with Spencer, while also, by her having the phone, disarming Cooper, taking away that ability for him to actually be able to kill Spencer. So I just thought that that was very clever, very smart writing, and I think that it was very appropriate. And of course, here you see in the next scene, Cooper does eventually end up coming in. I think he ends up using a key or something. Yeah, he unlocks the bathroom door, and he does get in there. And of course, you know, we don't really know what he has done with the family at this point. Did he kill them? Did he hide them away? Did he, like, kidnap them? Like, what did he do to the family? Up to this point, we don't really know. So he basically ends up hauling her out, and he actually says something really weird, which I don't really understand why they put that in the film in terms of writing, unless it was to sort of try to communicate or convey to us, the audience, that this is the type of man that we're dealing with. And he says that he wants to leave, like, one of his fingers on her shoulder the whole time, or something weird like that. So I thought that was a little bit strange, but at the same time, I think that it might have been just doing that to sort of show maybe his like OCD or like his personality, you know, his way of thinking, so to speak, his mentality, and you know, the whole, you know, just his train of thought, so to speak. I'm assuming there's no other reason why I would see, you know, why they would do that, other than to just sort of show off some characteristics and you know, some of, you know, just the way he is, his OCD and whatnot. So he ends up taking taking Lady Raven out to his vehicle, and I really thought that this part was kind of clever as well, because she actually sort of, remember what we learned earlier from the police investigation and the evidence that she already accumulated, stuff that she already knew about him, was that she knew that he had a lot of problems with like past trauma with his mother or something like that. So she actually starts to act like his mother, which was something else that I thought was very clever in the writing. You know, if they were going to say that he had this past trauma, you know, with his mom, then I think it was very appropriate, you know, because she knew about it, because the police had been sort of filling her in with the investigation, letting her know about, you know, the serial killer. That was the whole point of her concert, was to create this trap, hence the name of the movie being Trap, and whatnot. But you get what I'm saying, you know, she knew that he had this sort of weakness or this trauma that was surrounding his mother. So she actually starts talking to him as if she was mom, you know, his mom, with authority, and sort of being like, hey, you're bad, you know, you're speaking out of line, you're doing things that you're not really supposed to be doing and whatnot. So I really like that as well. I really thought that that was really good writing. So she ends up being able to sort of talk her way out of the vehicle, and she ends up reuniting with the family. Now, if I'm going to be honest with you, the movie ended in a way that I was actually not suspecting, in the sense of they actually kept going with the story that they were telling, whereas for me, I was hoping that they were going to sort of throw like a curveball, or, you know, throw something out in left field, because I was hoping that there was going to be like a huge revelation at the end of the movie where we actually learned that maybe the mom was actually the killer, but they decided not to go with that route. They decided to stay with Cooper. Cooper was the killer, but I think it could have had such a major big impact, such a crazy twist and turn, if we had have learned that maybe the mom herself was actually the killer. I think it would have been more beneficial. I think it would have been cooler. I think it was a really big missed opportunity, actually. But either way, I thought, you know, I still loved the movie. Well, not loved the movie, but I still thought the movie was good. But I do think that they should have sort of thrown that curveball, and maybe by the end of it, maybe if Cooper ended up being arrested, or once they did actually say, you know, sort of conclude that Cooper story, I think it would have been cool if we end up learning that it was actually the wife, and Cooper just ended up taking the blame for it, which is why he was acting so suspicious the whole time. I just thought it was cool. Like, it could have been almost like a Bonnie and Clyde, or almost like a Romeo and Juliet type film, except maybe one of them survive, or one of them fall, but only because they took the fall for the other. That's just me. I think that would have been very clever in the writing. I think it would have been way cooler if the mom actually was the villain as opposed to Cooper, but anyways, they didn't go with that route. So Lady Raven ends up you know, basically reuniting with Rachel and Riley, and essentially, from what I can tell, the dad, I almost got the impression that the dad was going to surrender, because then, as you can see in the screenshot, the house ends up getting surrounded by the police, the FBI, and all the authorities. They're there to arrest him. But once again, you know, this whole, you know, you do have to suspend your, you know, your disbelief. You have to suspend your imagination on reality a little bit. And even this part here, I thought was way too far-fetched. Like, the house is surrounded, and he's still able to just sort of, I won't go as far as say as walk out scot-free, but he's able to get around all them, and, you know, then we end up getting the screenshot here where he ends up reappearing again with Lady Raven. And I just thought that that part of the movie was just so far-fetched, and I was like, really? Like, they're, like, still after all of that? I mean, we're basically at the end of the movie, and he's still not captured. He's still just walking around simply in a disguise. And I would just think that if you had this form of authority, this FBI agency, this form of authority, like, I still think that, you know, I just felt like they would have been more organized in this, especially in, you know, in today's age. Everything is registered, everything is licensed, everything is monitored, everything is like, you know, you got to sign in here and sign out here. And I just feel like, you know, I feel like they would have been more organized and they would realize, you know, that he was escaped or in a disguise. Like, I didn't buy the fact that he still was able to get to Lady Raven, so to speak, you know, with this disguise. And this is when they do the big quote-unquote reveal. It's almost like they try to pull the rug out from under us, as if it's some big secret. And this is when we learn that it was the mom who actually set the trap. And she actually ends up explaining to the dad later on. Well, first we see her talking to the lead FBI agent, who was actually the profiler, who I believe her name was Dr. Josephine Grant. She was actually the profiler that was in the entire movie, who was at the stadium trying to catch Cooper. And so with this screenshot, as you can see, this is when it was like the quote-unquote big reveal. This is when, you know, they sort of try to pull the rug out from under you and be like, oh, it was actually the wife and the mom the whole time who knew that he was the butcher, and she was the one that sort of, you know, tried to set up this trap. But once again, I just didn't really buy into it, because if she really was afraid or really did believe that he was the butcher, I mean, would you really let your daughter go to a concert with a serial killer? It was just a lot of things. So I think it would have been more effective for me, in my personal subjective opinion, excuse me, I think it would have been a lot more effective if, rather than them saying that this whole trap and this whole ordeal was sort of, you know, her idea, I think it would have been more beneficial if they had pulled the rug out from under us by saying she was actually the butcher, and I think that would have been way more effective. And so the next screenshot then we get, of course, is her actually explaining to Cooper how she caught on to the idea that he was, you know, the butcher. And, you know, there was, you know, he sort of tosses around ideas like, you know, him being out late. You know, he was kind of hoping that she would think that he was having an affair, that sort of thing. And she actually explains to us in this scene that the reason why she was able to catch on and how she was able to figure out that he was the butcher was based on the cleaning, I think she said, like the chemicals or the cleaning supplies or something like that that he was using to, I guess, to clean up the crime scenes. He kept coming home with this distinct smell on him, which is why she ended up figuring it out. She claims that she knew he didn't have an affair, but because she could smell these chemicals, I don't know, maybe she put two and two together. I think she also says at one point as well that she did follow him or something, or I could be wrong, but I thought she said that she did follow him out to one of the warehouses or one of the vacant houses or whatever, wherever it was that he kept one of his victims or something. I could be completely wrong, but I'm almost 100% sure that there was one point where she said that she followed him. Either that or he questioned her and he was like, hey, did you follow me out to one of the crime scenes? Something like that. Either way, she figured it out, and I do remember distinctly her talking about the washing agent, the cleaning agent that he was using, I would assume, on the crime scenes and whatnot. She said it was very distinct, and this is when she sort of started to put two and two together. And that's like sort of the big reveal. And then of course the very final scene of the whole movie, of the whole film, is of course the police arresting him. They do sort of I think allude to the idea that maybe he could sort of escape again. I don't think they showed him actually escape, but they sort of alluded to the idea that he could end up escaping custody. But that in a nutshell is basically where the movie ends. It ends with him being arrested and with them revealing that the mom was sort of the brains behind the operation. She was the one that caught on, realizing that he was this, you know, serial killer, realizing that he was the menace and that he was the butcher. She wasn't 100% sure. She did say in the movie that she was not 100% sure if he was the killer, but she contacted the police to sort of almost like a process of elimination. If he is the butcher, then he will be arrested. If he's not the butcher, then it would come up that he was innocent and the slate would be clean and she would just resume being his wife and whatnot. And that is basically what the movie was all about. That was the scene by scene breakdown. Now, I did, like I was saying earlier, you know, I loved this movie up to the point when Cooper revealed to Lady Raven that he was actually the killer. That was when I really thought the movie went downhill. Now up to that point, I think that happens like probably roughly around 50 minutes or maybe even an hour. Like it is a fair amount of ways into the movie, like probably halfway through the movie, maybe a little bit more than halfway when this scene occurs. But up to that point, everything that happens in the stadium, I absolutely loved. I even thought the writing for Lady Raven, like I keep saying, she was the best written, well-rounded character, best character development of all the movie. And I think that Ariel Donoghue had the best performance as Riley. Now don't get me wrong, I do think Seleka Shyamalan, probably butchering that name and I apologize if I am, very tired, can't even see the name hardly. Either way, I wouldn't know how to pronounce it anyways. But either way, she did a phenomenal performance too. But I do think that Lady Raven was the best well-written character. I was a little bit disappointed with Alison Pill. I was kind of hoping that she would have been in the movie a little bit more. I love Alison Pill. I think she's a phenomenal actor and A+ actor, for sure, in my opinion. All these things are subjective, but I absolutely love her as an actor. And I would have loved to see her in the movie a lot more. But I did like her. I thought her performance was good for what it was. Like I said, she's hardly in the movie anyways. Same thing with Spencer. Really, the movie really revolved around Riley, Cooper, and Lady Raven. And overall, I did enjoy the movie. If I had to put a number on Trap, I would probably give this movie like, I would say definitely a 60, maybe a 65, but I don't think I would quite go to 65 because there's just too much that I was not a fan of. Like, I really did not like it when Cooper revealed to, like I said, probably the most famous person in this world, almost like a Taylor Swift type character. He just up and reveals to her that he's this killer, and I just thought that that was so far-fetched, especially when there were so many other things that he could have done. He could have easily gotten out of that. He's a killer. He's been evading police and authority forever. He could have just told his daughter Riley, go and meet me in the car. They weren't looking for her. She wasn't suspicious, and he could have escaped through a vent or something. You know, he was already up on the roof, so I mean, I don't know why he couldn't just escape. Excuse me. And that part of the movie is really what took me out of it. But overall, I still really had a lot of fun. I would still, I think I would, honestly, I'd probably settle with like a 60%. I think I would give this movie a 6 out of 10. I did still enjoy it, and I had a lot of fun watching it, but it is very forgettable. I won't watch this movie again. This is a one-off for me. If they came out with the sequel, I'm probably not going to watch it. I loved watching this one, but I'm not interested in seeing this again. I would not watch a sequel. And like I said, the writing up to the point of him revealing himself to the celebrity, to me, I loved it up to that point, and then from there on, it was just downhill. But anyways, folks, that's my review and scene-by-scene breakdown of the brand new movie, Trap. So let me know in the comment section below if you've seen this movie, and if you liked it, tell me why or why not. I hope you liked this podcast. If you did, click the subscribe button, follow along, and until the next video, take care.